Let's get started learning how Python works. Today we're going to first look at some values, their types, and names for those values. And we're going to see how to visualize what's going on behind the scenes. So one obvious value is an integer, 567. And let's see what type it is. Python has a function type, which will, you give it a value and it tells you what type it is. So that's a type int. And another value would be a word like kitten, okay? And we can ask, well, what's the type of that? Okay, it's type str. Str is short for string. Another value is true or false. Let's see what this type is. The type of true is Boolean. Now, or bool. Bool is short for Boolean, and that's the name of George Boole, who lived in the 1800s and did some work in logic. Okay, there's one more type of value we're going to look at, and that's a list. There's a list of 4 items, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can ask, what's the type of that? Well, type is list. Okay, now list in some language can have only one type of value. But here, you can see I've made a list of a number, a string, and a Boolean value, and it works perfectly well. Now you can use the up arrow keys to retrieve previous lines. You don't have to retype them, and we can then look for the type of this object. It's still list, okay. Although I've typed in some values here and explored their types, the interpreter hasn't remembered any of these values. So if I wanted to remember some of these values, I have to give them names. So let's give, this is how you give a name to a value. You put a name on the left, an equal sign, which really doesn't mean equals, it means gets the value. So here we have A is being given, the A is becoming the name of the value 5. And just to see that this is not the same as the equal signs in math tells you that, well, so I can't assign to this on the left, but I can put, if I put 2 equal sign, that is the Boolean operator that compares the left-hand side with the right-hand side. Since A has 5, 5 plus 5 is 10, and the left and right have the same value, so we get true back. If we wanted to make it different, we get now false. Okay. In fact, we can, let's see what happens here if we go A plus A equals 11. Well, it's class Boolean. So, because it gives it, what the interpreter does is to evaluate the logical expression A plus A equals 11, gets back false, and the type of that is bool. Okay, so now we have here A being a name of 5. Let's draw a picture of what we mean by this, okay? So let me, over here, we're going to draw a rectangle. This rectangle is going to hold the content of our values. That's where the 5 is going to be. And we're going to draw a little box above it for the type. And then we're going to put over here another box, which is, it's going to be a reference count. It's going to be how many names the object has. So at the first bit, I would create objects here, such as 5, and the type is of this is int, and it doesn't have any names yet. So because the value over here is 0, as soon as the interpreter deals with this, creates this value, it forgets it, because when the number of names that a value has goes to 0, then it's removed from memory. So the way to prevent that is to give it a name, as we've done here, where we have a name A. Well, we don't want to get rid of, just have pure drawing and erase that extra box there. Okay, so we have the letter A, that's our name, and it points to, or is a reference to, this object. It tells us, Python uses the name to record where this is in memory. Okay, now because it has a name, this would get updated to 1. Now, let's see what happens if I say B equals A. Now, this is assigning, what this instruction does is it reads out the object that's an A and gives the name B to it. So now here, if that's correct, what I should have over here is the name B also pointing to this object, and then the name count has gone to 2 because this object has 2 names. Now, what I can do is then ask, well, what happens when if I just type in here, let's see. I type in here, let me get this a little bit out of the way. The key to using a graphics tablet, which I'm doing here, is to not use your mouse, and to use the graphics tablet or the pen for everything. Otherwise, you can have a conflict. Okay, so now let's type just B and see, yes, B has 5. It is picking up the value that we assigned it. Now, what happens if I go B equals 6? Well, then A is still 5, and B now is the object 6. So what happened over here was that we erased this connection. B is no longer the name of 5. It's now pointing to the name of another object. Okay. There's the type and the reference box. And then we're going to put the value 6 in here. And this is still of type int. And now this has 1 name, and this name count would go back to 1. Okay, now if I went and did the instruction over here as A gets the value that B has, then what that would do is that would erase this connection here between this name and this object. This line would then come down and point here. We would erase that. Oh, I get rid of that. So we can just draw. There's the name, and then this name's going to go to 0. This would go to 2, and then this object would then be removed from memory. So this sort of visualizes and helps you to visualize what's going on. Well, that's it for now.